The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here he is, Brandon.
Welcome back to the Brandon Peters Show as we dive into the second installment of our Farewell DCEU series, which I guess isn't official naming of it, but we're calling it that. We'll be discussing the theatrical release of Justice League, Aquaman, Shazam, and Birds of Prey, and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. That is the title. I like that title, and I'm sticking to that title, even if it was altered or chopped. Joining me again for this series, formerly of The Wrap, now of Puck, Scott Mendelson.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Hello. And I'm really excited for this one. Returning to the show for the first time in 3 years, the Tomato Meter approved critic, writer of Uterus Horror, Uncertified Forgotten, and co-author of Queen Horror, a film guide, the blogging banshee herself, Molly Henery.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me back.
Welcome. It has been a while, but it's not like we haven't tried. So people wondering, but it's now worked out. So I'm very happy to have you back. And I felt that you would bring interesting angle to these. I wanted you here because you're like, I don't know if I could, but I'm like, yes, you're exactly what I want. So welcome. Before we get started though, Molly, I want your thoughts basically on the overall, like DC Comics, its characters, and then your sort of overall thoughts on this particular run of movies as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly grew up in the 90s, so obviously I was very invested with like Batman the Animated Series, and then eventually on to the Batman Beyond cartoon and things like that. And of course, just all of the amazing Batman movies. So most of my DC knowledge is Batman based, which I feel like most casual DC fans, that's probably true for them as well. But then I also enjoyed, if anyone even remembers this, the Birds of Prey TV show that lasted, I think, for one season. I was very into that show when it was on.
You're the one.
Yeah, it's because I have a very long-standing crush on Dinah Meyer. So, you know, and she's amazing in that show. So there was at least one redeeming quality.
I have a very lifelong crush on Mia Sara, so that worked too.
Yes. Oh, she's amazing in that.
Yes.
And then I think the only actual DC comic that I've read is Watchmen. Oddly enough. So, and I've always enjoyed superhero stuff, even though it's mostly been in film and shows and things like that. I will say as a whole, this DCEU has not really been for me. Like, there are some shining moments, I think, but for me, the characters that we typically get from DC that get these big movies are just not that interesting to me. And I don't know if that's because of the way that they've been done in film and television. They just don't have a lot of depth to them, with the exception of obviously Batman, which is why we have so much Batman. But like Superman as a character tends to bore me to tears. Wonder Woman, a little bit better, but still kind of boring to me. So it's these films, just I can see what they were trying to do, but as a whole, it's just I'm not super sad that this era is coming to an end. But
to be fair, it's had a long time and a lot of movies, so it's fair enough. It's like a television show that ran for 8 years and gets canceled, and people like gone too soon. It's like they gave it 8 years.
Yeah, exactly. They really tried, and I appreciate the effort. And like I said, there are definitely some really good moments in there. But I think it's definitely time for the end to come.
Fair enough. That's a fair assessment. And you know, receipts show that as well with the box office. And I always say you bring up something interesting that I think it's true that people are always, no matter what, they're going to show up for Batman and they're going to show up for Spider-Man. Those are two that they're always going to show up for. Maybe Wolverine, or maybe just Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. But
yeah.
So those are maybe the three surefire things in superhero movies that they can count on. So we will pick up where we left off. We left off on a high for Scott and I last week. Things were looking good. We went through a terrible movie. We were like, we found good things to say about Man of Steel, Batman v Superman. We didn't like Suicide Squad, but we liked Wonder Woman. So we were like,
Wonder Woman's kicking ass. They've got their breakthrough
coming together.
Character.
It's coming together for...
Surely everything will be fine now, right?
For Justice League 2017.
What's on your weird mind?
I'm putting together a team.
I'm in. You are?
That was beautiful.
These things are going to keep coming.
You get technical. I'm on bug duty.
Let's do it. Ride ain't over yet. My man. Justice League. Rated PG-13.
Credited directing to Zack Snyder. Though I think we all know Joss Whedon came in and did plenty. And so Molly, I will say, behind the scenes here, we had to push back the original recording of this, which I'm now kind of grateful for, because I had to experience both Justice Leagues for the episodes I'm recording in close proximity, so I could really see the differences in these. So it's much more interesting now to see and have a good thoughts on that. So while I want to note, we will be covering the 4-hour Zack Snyder's Justice League. This is going to focus on what is there theatrically in 2017, though now having these both available, it's going to be hard not to compare, but we will do our best to try to focus on what's here, which was written by Chris Terrio, Joss Whedon, I'm sure not together, on a story by Terrio and Snyder, starring Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Jason Momoa, Ezra Miller, Ray Fisher, Jeremy Irons, Diane Lane, J.K. Simmons, Ciarán Hinds, Amber Heard, Joe Morton, with Joe Manganiello and Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. Fueled by his restored faith in humanity and inspired by Superman's selfless act, Bruce Wayne enlists the help of his newfound ally, Diana Prince, to face an even greater enemy. Named after the band Steppenwolf. Just trying to bring rock back. So this is where this is the first point of contention with this movie, is Snyder's in the middle of it, because they were like, okay, we're gonna boom these. We're gonna do Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, Justice League. These are just all gonna be part one. Justice League Part 1. That's correct. He's in the middle of shooting this, and I can't remember. Does his daughter takes her own life?
Yes.
And then they fire him?
Okay, I'm going to be as charitable as possible to both parties here.
There you go.
From what I've gathered, they were not happy with what he was doing. Either they were going to come to some kind of brokered peace, or he was going to be cut loose at some point. His daughter passes away. He tries to press on anyway, and according to him, and this is fair, decides between his, the idea that, throwing himself into work was not helping, especially with the conflicts and the micromanaging that was going on set. So those two things combined, he steps away. Now, whether he was fired and they use that as and I mean this with all respect, we're all adults here, a face-saving excuse, or whether, he really would have otherwise stayed on and they would have found some way to work together, I don't know. But he did step down, I think May 2017, give or take. It was right after Comic-Con, or right after CinemaCon. Maybe April, May. And yeah, Joss Whedon, who had already been brought on to sort of do some rewriting for the already existing reshoots, and was unofficially, officially tasked with doing a Batgirl movie, which of course never came to be. At least not that version. Ha ha ha.
Who was allowed to save face leaving Marvel, which sounded like he was just, I'm done. But behind the scenes, I believe he was told to
well,
scram.
it's. I think they would have had him back if he had wanted to come back, just because, they kind of, Age of Ultron was not a super pleasant production, but I think they were aware of how much value he brought both to the Avengers films and to his role sort of overseeing and or sort of being a consultant on pretty much the entirety of phase 2. So yeah, I think in all things being equal, if he had wanted to come back, they would have said, okay, go off for 2 years, do something else, and then come back for a third one, but that was never in the cards.
Gotcha.
So anyway, Joss Whedon comes in, he directs the movie, and I without getting to the discourse, I don't like when people call this the Joss Whedon version of Justice League, because let's be honest, this is the studio version of Justice League. This is what the Warner Brothers executives wanted and thought would be the most financially viable in terms of a Justice League theatrical cut. And I think one of the reasons that the shoot was as allegedly contentious as it was for all parties is I don't think anybody wanted to be there.
No,
Not
it
Whedon,
soured
not Affleck. Not Fisher.
Affleck was there to be there, and then as we mentioned, his movie Live by Night didn't do well, and then he has to go through these painstaking reshoots and seeing who I'm guessing Snyder is a good friend of Affleck. People like working with Snyder. They continue their returns, stuff like that. And I imagine he didn't like seeing what was going on there, as did Momoa, like all of them. So, and Ray Fisher was mistreated tremendously through this process as well. So,
so he departs, Whedon comes in, and right up to the release and slightly after, everybody keeps up the company line that this is, Zack Snyder's film in spirit, that everybody was fine working with Whedon. He was just coming in to paper over some holes, et cetera, et cetera. And it's funny because when we first watched the theatrical cut, there's stuff that we were all sure was Snyder that was actually ended up being Whedon stuff.
Yeah,
like the opening credits montage, which is actually very grim and cynical and pessimistic. Like, oh, that's clearly a Snyder thing, and turned out nope, that was Whedon. And one thing that and again, in retrospect, it doesn't matter, but Snyder got some flack for some allegedly salacious material that turned out to be Whedon's. There was some pre-release, again, controversy, I like to call them, about, the Amazon characters are such skimpier clothing compared to what they were in Wonder Woman. And, having seen the film slightly before it came out, it's like, in the movie, they all look exactly the same. I've seen Wonder Woman. I saw it twice. By opening weekend, I had seen Justice League twice. They look the same. And before I get way off subject here, as far as how'd the movie turn out, in a world where comic book superhero movies, specifically Marvel DC, were not at the center of the pop culture monoculture, it was fine. It's a fun, enjoyable, colorful, 110-minute superhero adventure comedy romp where you've got a lot of good actors that are sort of mingling together. And if the first Avengers film was about people who don't quite mesh together, coming together as a work family, then Justice League was basically about people who are depressed and mourning and in grief from their failures, coming together as a surrogate family. I think the third act is mediocre and disappointing and underwhelming. And I think, without skipping ahead, I think that's the biggest improvement in the Snyder version, is that the third act is a banger. I think if this film had a third act on par with, say, the Snyder cut of Justice League, or Aquaman for that matter, I think it would have been a lot better received, even without even accounting for all the discourse. Is it a great movie? No. But again, in a world where these films are just one kind of tentpole blockbuster franchise, whatever, it's a good time.
All right.
And I certainly think the Snyder version is better, but I don't think this film is a war crime. I never have.
Molly, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think that it is necessarily a terrible film by any means. I think that it mostly suffers from two things for me, two big issues. One is just that and this honestly, depending on who you talk to, this might be the cardinal sin that a film can do, is that I just kind of thought that it was boring. And because if a bad movie is bad, at least sometimes you can have fun watching the badness. And for me, I didn't feel invested with what was happening. It had the same the whole climax had the same thing that almost every superhero movie does, where there's some world ending thing and there's a beam of light that goes into the sky and all and it's like kind of not super clear necessarily what exactly this thing does or why or anything. It's just the point is that it's going to destroy the world. And I mean, even in Suicide Squad, it's kind of the same look and feel with the big beam that's destroying the area. And so with regards to that, I just kind of think that there wasn't enough to hold at least my interest, and based on what the feedback that a lot of people have said for the film, probably a lot of others are in agreement. And I think the other thing is that I just didn't feel invested with any of the characters. I think to have this be the film where so many of the core cast was introduced for the first time was not the right thing to do for this big action hero come together, because obviously you can't really talk about this without comparing it to like the first Avengers film, where with that, even though some of those characters didn't get their own standalone film necessarily before, we at least had been introduced to all of the core characters in some way. We'd gotten to know them a little bit before throwing them all together for this big epic battle. And I think they were just kind of rushing it with the DCEU. They wanted to be as big and successful as the Marvel franchise had been, so they wanted to do all of these things to try to catch up, and it ultimately made the character development suffer quite a bit. And unfortunately, I think that there was also probably a bit of miscasting. I think I actually might be in the minority for this one, but I think I am not a fan of Ben Affleck as Batman. I think I just don't buy him as the character, and I don't know if it's necessarily his performance specifically, or if it's just there have been so many actors who have played that, and I can at least get behind most of them, maybe with the exception of like George Clooney or something. But or maybe I just have an aversion to Ben Affleck as an actor in general. But like, I think Cavill was a great choice for Superman. I think even though I don't necessarily like her as a person, I think Gadot was a great Wonder Woman. But yeah, it's just, I think the characters is where it fell short the most for me. I just did not feel invested in any of these characters. I didn't necessarily enjoy the dynamics between all of them. And again, it's because it wasn't earned. We didn't get that development that we really needed to care about what is happening with these characters and if they're going to succeed in saving the world.
Gotcha. I speaking of character, I noticed something this time around when I'm watching these movies that takes a turn here with them. Well, Scott and I talked about Gadot, like that she's great. She's great. There's like an essence, even if she's like some of her line reads don't check or whatever, but there's like an essence to her that comes off that. And we said, like, we were allowed to go through Arnold in the 80s, with these kind of line reads, but we're not, a woman does them. It's not allowed apparently. But she's got this essence about her with it. Affleck, he's fine, Bruce Wayne, all this stuff, but like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman at this point were all like portrayed, written on paper, where I think you could have interchanged them with different actors. Whereas in Justice League comes along, they're doing what Marvel did and formulated them to the actors, where I think they don't have enough time, so they have to let Jason Momoa form the character. They have to let Ezra Miller form a character. Ray Fisher, short end of the stick, because he's in this edition, he's kind of just monotone, boring. All his good stuff was left on the cutting room floor, as we saw in Justice League. Mm-hmm. The stuff where you would latch on to Cyberman is a lot more. Or wait, Cyborg. Sorry,
Cyborg.
I had new Doctor Who this weekend, so my mind is Cyborg. So Cyborg, where you would latch onto him, all that stuff's on the floor, and the only trace of humanity and stuff you can get from him is the little Joe Morton shows up in this one, where he's a big figure in the Snyder cut. So I feel like that's maybe why Momoa takes off in his movie, because makes $1 billion the following years, because he was allowed to, do his own thing. Ezra Miller is kind of feels like he's coming up, or they're coming up with a Barry Allen of their own there, because it's not like Grant Gustin is on television at the time, which that's the biggest challenge there, is there's already a very well-liked actor in the role of Barry Allen, which a lot at this time also we haven't mentioned, they have TV shows going on, and when they want to do something in the movies, they're making them write off those characters in the TV show at the same time, which is interesting, because we'll later have 2 Batmans at the same time in theaters. So, but things change. I think I agree that the third act is a lame duck. Like, it is, they throw in that family, visually not interesting. We never really understood what was going on with this big dome of stuff. I think Steppenwolf is done almost as big a disservice as Cyborg here, and there's not enough buildup to make this fear worthwhile. Like, it's just okay, and you get a little bit of Wonder Woman going, yeah, this is what this guy does. I think the Steppenwolf journey to whatever, his version of a glowy beam in the sky isn't understood enough from an audience to invest in the third act as well.
And I think that's something that the Snyder Cut does a lot better, is that it's a lot clearer what the hell is going on in the third act, and what their big superheroic plan is to save the day.
Yeah, and this one is a lot more, I called it ragingly colorful, especially compared to the former films. It's got a zippity-doo-dah attitude to it, where it can. There is the creepy Henry Cavill mustache thing that we got to note, because he was filming Mission Impossible 7 and needed to keep it in case of reshoots. I think that was probably his protest of what was going on. And his performance is I think he's a bit phony in this one, because they're making him they're trying to 180 him from what he's been in the previous movies a bit too much. In this version, I like his performance in the other one, but in this version, he's like, ha ha ha. And that's not him. That's not what he was bringing to Superman.
This cut is very odd in that sense, in that character-wise, it tries to retcon, especially the Holy Trinity, into versions that you're familiar with. You have, a gee whiz optimistic Superman. You have just an empowering, happy to be here Wonder Woman, and you have a Batman that's frankly closer to Dick Sprang than Frank Miller. But plot-wise, when you watch both versions, you realize that a lot of the changes they made were scenes that more closely tied it into the plot of Wonder Woman and the plot of Batman v Superman.
Right.
So it's skewed weird way. It's actually far more of a direct sequel to those films.
Yeah.
And as far as and this is obviously years before I knew what did or didn't happen with Ray Fisher, I think he's terrific in this film. And as far as extra screen time, I don't think he gets any less screen time than Ezra, most of the other cast members.
Well, no. I just think his best stuff is on the cutting room floor, in my opinion.
Also, and this is neither here nor there, most of the deleted footage from him, especially before the third act, is montage.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is Joe Morton monologuing.
There's a lot of that in the Snyder Cut.
Most things will be good if you add Joe Morton monologuing.
Right.
And so I actually, in some ways, I like the idea in this film that he doesn't see himself as this Quasimodo Frankenstein's monster kind of thing, that he knows right away that he's not the monster. His dad might be, but he's not. And I thought that was a very interesting choice, that I was kind of shocked to see that not in the Snyder Cut. And I like that Joe Morton lives at the end of this film. I like the idea that at the end, they are going to have a better relationship with each other, as father and son. And that, alongside seemingly the better relationship that Barry Allen's going to have with his incarcerated father.
Which they
And-
would probably share that
Yeah.
in the Flash Cyborg movie that never happened.
Exactly. It's you can see, I don't know that every change in this theatrical cut from the Snyder cut was necessarily, at the last minute. I mean, it's I don't think there may never have been a theatrical version of this film where you had what's her name, Clemens in a wordless cameo flying through the air with hot dogs brushing against her face.
Yeah.
Such a waste of Kiersey Clemens.
Yes, it is. She's very good in the Monarch show, by the way.
Yes, love her.
But so but yes, in a perfect world where Batman v Superman had been well received, and frankly, Zack Snyder had not suffered his family tragedy, I do think there would have been a 3-hour version of this film that would have worked, that would have had all the stuff that was good about the Snyder cut with less of the fat.
Mm-hmm. No, his thing that if it would have hit theaters, it would never have been 4 hours. He knows that, but if he was going to get it going streaming service, it could play like a little mini series. Yeah,
and I think as far as them not doing the work and doing the setup, I think especially the 4-hour version, the first hour and 50 minutes of that is the setup.
Yeah,
it
jumps.
These characters are. And then the second movie is okay. Here's the Justice League movie.
Yeah, very true. It's kind of like just the new Hunger Games is almost like a double feature in one movie.
Yes,
it's a lot of movie, but I enjoyed that movie. I
quite a
would put
bit.
that
Yes,
there. Yes. And then there's Elfman's score here, which is pretty desperate. It reuses the Williams theme and his own Batman theme, and it feels a little bit like they're trying to pull at some sort of whatever strings they can, and then they throw on this can we hurry up and get a come together modern cover so we can put it on trailers and stuff and play it in the credits? I
will admit I enjoyed the final trailer that was set to a cover of We Can Be Heroes. It was oddly schmaltzy and sentimental in a way that I appreciated.
Gotcha.
And if anything, I think it sort of mimics the sincerity that often contrasts Snyder's work versus Whedon's work. Whedon, obviously, he loves melodrama as much as everybody else does, but there's obviously a certain sarcasm and a certain, commenting on the peril and their mist, yada yada, as a coping mechanism type thing. And I can imagine going from working for somebody like Snyder, who I think unfairly has a reputation for being humorless, when he's just very sincere, that he will not make fun of the story that he's telling.
Yeah.
Versus someone like Whedon, who is sarcastic, one of his defining attributes is sarcasm.
Well, I think Whedon in his writing has a way with it that works. It's very good. But since his exit from Marvel, they try to copy that, and it all comes across as, oh, this is stupid, isn't it? With everything they do, there's always that ha ha ha, just to make the audience feel comfortable about being at a suits and tights movie with glowy things.
Everybody complains about superhero humor having taken over Hollywood, yada yada yada. That's what it used to be. I mean, yes, I'm not even talking about the stuff that Joss Whedon did for X-Men, but a lot of the jokes in the first X-Men movie were basically there as sort of safety valves for people that weren't otherwise taking this stuff seriously at face value. It was like, don't worry, we know this stuff is ridiculous. But yeah, I don't think it's either of their best work, respectively speaking, and I think that's one of the reasons why the film doesn't quite work. Even though, again, as a movie to watch for 2 hours, I think it's entertaining. I was not bored, but if you were, then there's really no defense against that. I mean,
let's just say it still somehow managed like $16 million. Scott, how was the box office?
659, which was not great. I mean, basically less than Man of Steel, which is shocking if you think about it, since it was the reaction to Man of Steel that had them, doubling over to try to retrofit this whole thing. And as far as rushing, I mean, I've always been of mixed minds about that, because on one hand, the idea that, okay, we're going straight from Superman to Batman to Justice League. On the other hand, it was still 4 years, 4.5 years between Man of Steel and Justice League. And, Iron Man to Avengers was 4 years right there. And it was still about, Iron Man 2, Hulk, Captain America, Thor. So 6 movies there, and then 5 movies for the DCU. And hell, half the time they don't count the Incredible Hulk anyway.
Well, they didn't have a offshoot Suicide Squad story in the middle. Like that's maybe where another hero movie could have gone.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's just, I wonder to what extent, I don't know if they were rushing. I think they bet on the wrong filmmaker.
Well,
and my feeling, and I was writing this in April 2016, was like, okay, the movie's out. You either fire him now or you let him make the movie he wants to make.
Yeah. True.
But unfortunately, they tried to have it both ways.
Yeah, I think that all of the studio interference, and it definitely hurt both versions of this film. And it makes me wonder how, obviously this isn't something I would want to see at this point, but it does make me wonder if either of those filmmakers had just been kind of given a bit more free reign, how different not only would the film itself be, but how different would this entire franchise ultimately be? Because this was supposed to be the big turning point. This was supposed to be this huge pivotal moment in this franchise. And it, for me at least, it kind of felt like the beginning of the end.
Yes. In fact, the theatrical cut, what I find is fascinating about it is that it feels like a series finale.
It does.
Well, it also felt like when this movie came out, it's supposed to be the Justice League. It's supposed to be the biggest event. And at this point, I remember the vibe feeling like we just need to get through this one.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna go into some stuff. Because Wonder Woman was a major success for them. That's where they were like, oh, cool. But now we got Justice League right after, and we just need to get through this, and then next year we'll have Aquaman. Like that is like the vibe that this movie had going into it.
Yeah, because I think we were all, I don't think anyone expected Aquaman to do $1 billion, but there was still the assumption that you had James Wan, who made a pretty damn good Fast and Furious movie under equally impossible circumstances. And I think, we all knew that, the running joke I used to make was, and this was after Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad came out, was that, okay, James Wan has a clause in his contract, and he sees any Warner Brothers executive in the editing room, he walks over to Blumhouse and starts doing horror franchises for them.
And
yeah. 2 regime changes later.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything more to say about Justice League?
Just again, in a vacuum, it's fine. Now, you can certainly argue that a Justice League movie should be a lot better than fine. I remember that year. The only thing crazier to me than a Justice League movie coming out and being meh and more or less bombing was that there was a Power Rangers movie that came out the same year that I actually liked more.
I actually agree with you on that one.
And I didn't grow up liking Power Rangers.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I was not a fan of that. I was just old enough to think this is stupid when I was 13 or whatever.
Yeah. So
I will say one more thing, just because we like talking about these movies. You're probably old enough to remember this. I don't know if Molly is. I have no idea if she is or she isn't. It's not my business. But I love the fact that in the 90s, the Danny Elfman music was representative of the Tim Burton movies, which at the time were, adult and dark and not just for kids. And, with Batman Returns, it was very controversial. Oh my God, you can't bring your kids to this. The world is traumatized, yada, yada, yada. Yet, 25 years later, they bring back that music to signify that this Justice League movie is okay for young kids.
That does seem a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah. I always make the joke that, today's Marilyn Manson's, tomorrow's Beatles.
Fair enough. All right. So we got Scott with 5 stars, me with mixed, and Molly mixed negative. There you go. 5 out of 5, that is, Scott.
Of course.
5 stars. 5 stars. All right. So we will head on over to my man, Aquaman, from 2018.
Speaking of 5 stars.
Atlantis has always had a king. Now it needs something more. A hero.
Oh, no.
Your brother is about to declare war. We must stop him.
Sounds like fun. Let's do it. I'm nobody, but I came to save my home and the people that I love. Miss Juicy.
Aquaman, rated PG-13. Experience it in IMAX December 21st.
Yes, directed by James Wan, written by David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick. That is a long name. Will Beal, on a story by Juan Beal and Jeff Johns, starring Jason Momoa, Amber Heard, Willem Dafoe, Patrick Wilson, Nicole Kidman, Dolph Lundgren. Is it Yahya Abdul Mateen II?
Yes.
Okay, Tamara
I'll
Morrison.
let you say that.
Tamara Morrison, Michael Beach. Oh, when I did a Godzilla thing back on my old show years ago. I'm sure I'm on like dartboards all over Japan for my awful like I would look them up and just still do bad, and I apologize for that. Like I'm awful. Tamura Morrison, Michael Beach, Randall Park, featuring the voices of John Rhys Davies, Jamon Hansu, and Julie Andrews as Carathan. Arthur Curry, the human-born heir to the underwater kingdom of Atlantis, goes on a quest to prevent a war between the worlds of ocean and land. All right, Molly, you can kick us off for my man, Aquaman.
Well, obviously, since I am more of a horror person, I am already slightly biased with this one because of James Wan. let's just get that out of the way right there. This one I thought it was a lot of fun. I mean, Jason Momoa, I think he seemed like less so in Justice League, but more so in this one. It seemed like he had fun with the role, which I think goes a long way for the film. I am a big Willem Dafoe fan as well, and he is amazing in everything he does, including this. Patrick Wilson I like that we kind of get to see him in more of a villain role. I think that he does villain very, very well, and he doesn't get the opportunity to do that enough. I mean, off the top of my head, I think of this, I think of Hard Candy. I'm sure there are other roles, but those are the only two ones that immediately spring to mind. We think of him in a villain role. And just like this had such a stacked cast, and where I felt that Justice League visually didn't have a lot going on to really draw me in. This one, obviously, Aquaman had a lot of really great, interesting visuals. I thought the creature design for everything that was happening, like in the trench, was fantastic. My one huge criticism for this is when you look at Mira in Justice League and then you look at her in this movie, what happened? Like, she had this awesome, like, obviously no matter what, it's a superhero movie, she's going to be in a cat suit type outfit, but she had like a cool outfit in that one that had like a little bit of armor stuff going on. Her hair looked like a more natural red color. And then you come into this and she's basically wearing a sequin bodysuit and an aerial wig. What happened? I don't understand.
Was it maybe it was a comfort thing? Maybe if she was going to be doing a lot more, she preferred that. And wasn't she British in one of them?
Yes, in the Snyder film, she's British.
Oh, in the Snyder film, she's British.
Oh, okay, I was going to say, I don't remember that.
Sorry, yeah, in the Snyder film, she's British. But yeah, maybe it was comfort.
She's got the WandaVision thing where it's like, what the fuck is her? What's her accent again?
Storm happened. Yeah, it happens from movie to movie. But anyway, continue, Molly. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that this story, I felt way more invested in what was happening, and I feel like with anything James Wan does, even when he's doing something that is like very much a studio film, he still finds ways to incorporate his personality into it. And this very much feels like a DC superhero movie, while also feeling like his personality and his DNA is on every part of it, which I appreciate. And I don't know if that's because the studio gave him a little bit more freedom with it, and trusted him more because he had helmed so many great franchises already, or if it was just because this character and the background and the comics allowed for more fun. So this is one that I definitely had a blast with, and even though it's like maybe a little bit goofier than some of the other DCEU films, I think it is one of the more entertaining ones to watch for sure.
Yeah. Scott.
It's no secret I love this movie. It's my youngest son's favorite movie, and he's not wrong. visually, this is a spectacularly colorful and gloriously cinematic movie. It looked great in IMAX, and frankly, it looks great on Blu-ray it keeps the IMAX format. Jason Momoa, I always mispronounce his name. Jason Momoa is terrific in this picture, and what the film does that's very smart is that it makes him an underdog, which is not easy to do when you look like that. And aside from the opening scene where it's like he can take a missile and sort of brush it off, it's like, okay, fine, whatever. But for me, the scene where it cinches his character is right after that, when he's in the bar with his dad and these random toughs come up to him and you think, oh, have this stupid bar fight, you're going to show him how tough he is, blah, blah, blah. And of course, what happens is they end up, wanting selfies and they all get drunk together. One of the guys, by the way, has a big cell phone. So it entirely flips the script of convention in terms of what kind of guy he's going to be. And, he's not going to be the guy that has to always prove himself, how tough he is and blah, blah, blah. And, his performance, the character, and he basically says this toward the end, is like, he doesn't believe he is worthy. He is terrified of failure. And he does not believe he is good enough to, to the extent that he's, but even so, he is pretty quick to sort of, take up the sword and embark on the jury, to answer the call, if you will. Even though he's scared shitless and doesn't think it's a good idea, he does it anyway because it's the right thing to do. And that is an interesting dynamic. I think him and Heard are fun together. I think without getting into the off-screen discourse around Amber Heard, I think she's one of those actresses that has basically been best known for being ridiculously attractive. I think she's very good in the first act of The Danish Girl, but other than that, she hasn't had that many opportunities to actually act. But I think she's very fun in this picture. She gets the best kill in the movie, by the way. The thing with the wine bottles and the glass, which is just really cool. And the film is just stuffed to the gills with movie. There's like 36 locations. There's like 6 subplots. There's a half a dozen major supporting characters. And even though it's only 2 hours and 20 minutes, it all makes sense. It's coherent. It flows. And it's kind of a miracle of storytelling economy. And then right at the end, you get a third act, which frankly just delivers the fucking thunder in a way that we didn't get in Justice League. And frankly, we didn't get in Green Lantern several years earlier. I mean, this is an example of a film that promises a larger-than-life, balls-out, bonkers, bananas fantasy climax and actually delivers, which is just one reason why I think it was successful as it was. Because even if you didn't care about DC Comics, even if you didn't care about Aquaman, this was a year-end fantasy picture that was always tend to do well. They basically delivered on the scale of a Lord of the Rings picture, at least in the third act. And if I'm more optimistic in the box office fortunes of the sequel than most people are, maybe I'm just an optimistic idiot, but it's because those variables are still in place. It's still going to be, I presume, a larger-than-life, over-the-top, underwater action spectacular. And it's I used to, when it first came out, I called it "Oops, All Berries," the movie, and an acquaintance of mine online called it Costco the movie, which I kind of like, which is that it's got everything in bulk. And yes, as far as James Wan goes, I mean, it's almost subtle how he makes this a personal project in terms of the personal struggles of a mixed race person that doesn't feel really at home in either world, so to speak. And without making a equal quality argument, because there's only one Steven Spielberg, Wan is one of those guys that just is really good at making this level of blockbuster and, obviously more personal horror films of varying size and scale on the regular. And I think that's, I don't think there are that many people out there left that can do that, other than, maybe someone like Chris Nolan for obvious reasons.
Well, I think as big as successes as he's had, I still think he's overlooked. It's crazy.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
The guy is a name brand. He's delivered billion-dollar movies, franchise pictures, but I still feel he is overlooked. It's wild.
He is the only filmmaker to have delivered $2 billion movies in 2 different franchises, other than James Cameron. And he's the only filmmaker to deliver $2 billion pictures for 2 different studios.
And
Because
didn't he?
technically, Titanic and Avatar were both distributed by Fox overseas.
Isn't he the only director to have 2 films open to, was it $40+ million in the same calendar year? Well, the year that Insidious 2 and the Conjuring came out.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That might be true. And I will take your word on that.
I think he was like,
And
yeah.
It's a, and I wrote about this in, 2019, right before the Tenet trailer came out, the teaser came out. Like, I was kind of hoping that in 2020, what we were going to see after all these franchises came to an end, and this was back when Wonder Woman 2 was still supposed to come out in 2019, and Sonic the Hedgehog was to come out in 2019, No Time to Die was going to finish up Bond in 2019, et cetera, is that we're going to start to see if instead of having the movie star as the actor to film actress, we're going to have directors as the new movie stars. And we saw a little of that with Rian Johnson, obviously Chris Nolan, but, I will always wonder, in a non-COVID world, would Malignant have been a big hit simply by saying it's a new original horror film from James Wan?
I think
the guy that reinvented this franchise twice.
I think they're trying to turn it that way now after Oppenheimer and Barbie being the director's names flashing out, and Jordan Peele's name's been flashed out a lot too. But
he is him and Nolan or even today butts and seats marquee filmmakers.
I've been noticing trailers starting to promote directors again. Like, I've been noticing from the mind of director so and so, and putting their name up there, which seemed to disappear from trailers for a while.
Yeah, and I was hoping that would be the case with John M. Chu with In the Heights.
Yeah,
because he might not be an everyday name that everybody knows, but he has a long filmography of films that people like. And when you say from the guy that directed Crazy Rich Asians and Step Up 3, there is a contingency that go, oh, that is interesting to me.
Yeah, because I tell people all the time, like, there's for a long time, like I had, the normie people, not Chris, who's going to be on the show next week from a group called the Normies, but
civilians.
Like, why would I want to, I don't have any answers. I'm like, well, did you like this movie? Well, yeah, I love that. I'm like, the same person who made that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, because they're not throwing up from the director of such and such anymore, which spawns interest. So I've talked about my my film geekiness or whatever being so fine-tuned to creators more so nowadays than a franchise. Like, I'm more interested in the next picture from so-and-so. And so that's my franchise, I guess.
And that's, I wonder is, one reason I loved Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings as much as I did is it felt very much a high-quality, Destin Daniel Cretton picture. It felt very much both within the Marvel formula and a film from the guy that made the Glass Castle and Short Term 12 and Just Mercy.
Like I say with the Marvel movies,
I'm sorry.
Like I say with the Marvel movies, and like Aaron Newer says too, they all get to play with the same tools. They all get to play with the same sandbox.
And
some just do it better. Like, that's
the question is, if Ryan Coogler ever gets to make a non-franchise film again, will he be a marquee director?
Yeah.
Will people show up to Wrong Answer?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I showed up to Aquaman. I also like Aquaman. I love that this movie got made as if they might not ever get to make another Aquaman again.
They made the Aquaman.
They're like, well, we got Ocean Master, but Ocean Master has to work with Black Manta, and then we have to go to the trench at one point, and they have to have and it works. And I will say that the joy of this movie is after Justice League, and I talked about this on the last episode where I feel like, the action, if DC has anything over Marvel, the action, direction, second unit, whatever, I think is better than the Marvel one, photography wise, editing, and it's back here, and it's James Wan stuff that feels like James Wan, because like that Italy Black Manta rooftop chase attack thing is one of my favorite action sequences in a superhero movie, where they're running on the rooftops.
Yeah,
you got like a single shot going on through in the house and stuff, but it's awesome. And you mentioned Mara with the wine stabbing, good stuff. But this movie also has the trench scene, which is gorgeous and spooky and awesome. Like, it's like in this movie is I won't say it feels short, but you're enjoying every bit of length to it, to where you're like, when do we get off this ride? I don't know if I want to get off this ride yet. It's like it uses its colors to its own characteristic, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't feel like they're just coloring things more like the last movie. It's got a distinct vision for it. And I liked about, you mentioned Patrick Wilson's villain is good here. I like that him and Abdul Mateen, they're doing some classic superhero villain performances that I like, that gets lost in a lot of these like personality things where like, I want to understand the villain, and I want to know that if I were a villain, people would, like I don't need that all the time. But I like when you can have your like guy ha 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 and delivering stuff like Patrick Wilson. And yes, this movie is silly, but that's the joy of it, and it earns every bit of silliness because it is giving you some intense action, some batshit crazy action, talking crap, like, and it's all feels natural. It all feels right there. They jump out of a plane and just land in desert from high up in the air, and I'm like, yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's got a bit of a romancing the stone vibe to it for a bit. That's like probably my favorite section is when they leave the sea and go on this like treasure hunt search for the Triton thing, and it just, I don't know, like I buy, like, this is just a lot and I'm enjoying a lot. It's eye candy. It's some endearing character stuff. It's some good acting performance, some visual effects that are wonderful to look at. Like the undersea stuff's just wow. Very, very cool. And they get this big battle. You get Dolph Lundgren with like hair swooping around. And this is a meaty role for Amber Heard, which you mentioned, Scott, she doesn't get those, but she landed us with All the Boys Love Mandy Lane, which everybody was taken with her from that. And then just, I think Teresa Palmer got a lot of her parts somewhere along the line, because
for sure.
I can imagine them being in the same casting room, but not like Teresa Palmer got banger parts either. She just got a little bit more, I don't know, spotlight films that would be in there. But this is just I don't know what more to say that you two haven't, because Aquaman just is fresh. It's like, hey, here's where we can be something that's not Marvel and still be enjoyable and successful and do our own thing, and let a director, which they promoted with DC, that we were going to let people do their own films. And I have no doubt in my mind that Zack Snyder got to make Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. We know David Ayer didn't quite get to make his film. I believe Patty Jenkins probably did, though I haven't seen enough Patty Jenkins work to go that was a Patty Jenkins film. I did feel some of the action of that felt like she used Snyder's people in that movie, but it worked, and it had its own flair to it. It didn't feel like straight up Snyder stuff.
And it was an interview, and maybe she was just pulling my chain, whatever. This is one reason I don't do a ton of interviews, is she said basically that, especially after Batman v Superman was so divisively received, that it was that much easier for them to just let her do her own thing, because what she wanted to do was very different than, it was more traditional superhero melodrama. One thing I love about Aquaman is that it's so stuffed to the gills with stuff that it finds time for two emotionally character building moments for the secondary villain.
Yeah.
In the opening of the movie, after he machine guns a dozen innocent people, they still have this weirdly moving scene where his father gives him this sword that he got during World War II or something like that, or the Vietnam War. And then later, when the movie's as busy as can be, it still stops dead in his tracks so that the Black Mantis, whatever his name is, can have a doing cool science montage.
Yes, yeah, he does.
There's no reason that needs to be there, but it's cool. That's why it's there. And it's the whole movie is like that. It's like it's pure pleasure.
Yeah, I almost feel like this one feels a bit, obviously it's on a much grander scale because it has all of the huge effects in it, but this one feels more to me like it would fit in the world that Tim Burton built with his Batman movies.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why it was so fun to me. And I think that really the two smartest things that the studio did was hiring James Wan and Jason Momoa, because obviously we've talked about all the reasons why James Wan was perfect for this and why he did so amazing. But for me, since I am not someone who read the comics, when I thought of Aquaman before these films, I thought of like the short blonde haired guy in the goofy, like duo colored suit, that was almost like the butt of the joke of the Justice League is the version that I was used to. Yeah.
Absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And by casting Jason Momoa, they cast someone that they knew people were going to come out for because he already like was so popular after Game of Thrones. People love him. But also it allowed them, kind of like we were talking about earlier, allowed to have all these kind of different in an interesting context because it's human and Atlantean, but almost like racial issues and not feeling like you have a home. And the way that they made his character, to me, almost felt like he was being positioned to essentially be this franchise's Wolverine in a lot of ways. Like, he's kind of the anti-hero. He doesn't really necessarily want this role, but it's something that he is willing to do because he knows it's the right thing to do. And also just kind of like with his physicality and stuff too, I can picture them together in a lot of ways. But yeah, I think that his casting and hiring James Wan to direct I honestly can't imagine what this film would have been like if those two weren't involved. It would have been a very different film.
Well, you also get the touches of New Zealand and Australia with Nicole Kidman and Tamura Morrison as well,
who are terrific in these tiny parts.
Right?
Yeah, come to class up the joint.
And I will say, yeah, the Aquaman here is like he's likable in the Justice League, but it's a bunch of like, okay, dorks type role.
Yeah.
And here he's human. Like he's
and that's why that for me that scene in the bar is so important because it says, okay, he's not going to be like that the whole movie. Yeah. And what I do think was whether intentional or not, the film was made with the knowledge that while plenty of folks think of the Super Friends version of Aquaman, and that's fair, it's hilarious, there was an entire generation that grew up with the Justice League cartoon, in which he was the, pardon my, cheap, the badass, bare-shirted, hook-handed motherfucker that's, just kick ass and take names. So for that generation, they didn't need to be convinced that Aquaman could be cool. Sorry, hold on, I just turned off my video. Because they had grown up on a version where he already was cool. And this was just an approximation of that. But then they bring it all home by putting him in his conventionally comic book costume that actually works. And it just reminded me how much, even to a small extent, maybe I would have enjoyed Justice League a little bit more if he had been in that costume in that movie. So it really would have looked like the comic book come to life.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is with this and Black Panther and Spider-Verse and, Incredibles 2 for that matter, it is little wonder why in 2018 we all thought maybe comic book superhero movies are good, actually. Because that was a year when they were absolutely dominating the box office and the ecosystem. And this is why. Because when the other blockbusters are like The Dark Tower and King Arthur and the Legend of the Sword and The Mummy, of course people are going to fucking flock to Wonder Woman and Aquaman and Black Panther. They were winning because they were better, at least in terms of, conventional, franchise tentpole films. There are some exceptions, et cetera, Alita, Valerian, yada, yada, yada. But,
but no one was going to those.
Nobody was going.
Well, people decently went to Alita, not enough,
it
but
almost
like
got there.
Valerian. One I liked, Mortal Engines. Nobody went and saw that one.
That one's.
I liked that one a lot, but no.
And I think the big problem was at that time you had a lot of blockbuster competition that was trying to approximate the comic book superhero movie, like The Mummy, but comic book super and King Arthur. I know I keep using those examples, but yeah, Robin Hood.
That is Cruise Mummy.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. We would not speak disparagingly about the Brendan Fraser one.
No, only the third one.
What are we talking about here? Oh, yeah. That movie's like 20 years old, and I still don't remember the title. Like, is it Curse of the Tomb Dragon, whatever?
Dragon Emperor
I don't
is in
fucking
that.
know.
Dragon Emperor is in that. The title. It's either Tomb or
and then
Curse.
15 years later, Lucasfilm said, what if we made an Indiana Jones film that was worse?
Oh, Jesus. Anyway.
But no, I'll stop rambling. But yeah, I love Aquaman. I think it's a spectacular action adventure picture. And
Hopefully, I'm hoping I'm going to stay optimistic because I trust James Wan that
I
Aquaman.
still believe in James Wan.
I always believe in James Wan. There's no still. Never stopped. Never
No.
stopping.
Don't stop believing.
And if this one's a stinker for whatever reason, whatever. Clean slate next time.
We have Malignant, so we're fine.
Yes.
Molly, you like Malignant?
Oh, of course.
Okay,
Of
good.
course. I've read her work. I know she loves Malignant.
Oh, Malignant's so good.
I'd be shocked if she didn't.
It's so good. It's so good. All right. So we will move from Aquaman. We're gonna go big scale to like smaller, and I like smaller scale. With even though it's got an exclamation point, it's smaller scale. It's Shazam from 2019.
I read this study about superpowers, and in 6 out of 10, belief is the key.
I believe I can fly! I believe I can fly! Superman! Superman, what arm is it? Your phone's charged. What the hell? Oh, snap! You're welcome for not getting robbed!
Directed by David F. Sandberg, another horror guy going to DC. Written by Henry Gayden on a story by Gayden and Darren Lemke. This one stars Zachary Levi, Mark Strong, Asher Angel, Jack Dylan Grazer, Adam Brody, Jamin Hansu, Faith Herman, Megan Good, Grace, Carolyn Curry. I hope I got your name right because I know some people have not, and you email them. So I hope I got it right. Michelle Borth, Ian Chen, Ross Butler, DJ Catrona, Marta Milans, and my guy, Cooper Andrews, and my pal, John Glover. Newly fostered young boy in search of his mother instead finds unexpected superpowers and soon gains a powerful enemy. So I've had some interesting run-ins with this cast through convention stuff in the past couple of years. Got a little bits about him. John Glover one time came by my booth because we had a replica like actual prop model gremlin sitting there, and I asked him about this little like Sunday night movie from the 80s that they forced us to watch like multiple times in school, middle school, high school, called David, with Bernadette Peters, no relation, and the middle Lawrence kid. And it's about a dad who's getting divorced from a mom, and then shows up at the kid's school and tells him he's taking him to Disneyland and takes him to a hotel and burns down the hotel, and the kid survives. True story, based on a true story. So I just like, you know what, John, can we talk about something? He's like, sure. And I talked, he's like, why on earth would your school make you watch that repeatedly? I'm like, I don't know, but that was you scared the crap out of me for a long time because of that. And he's like, David was on the set with us and his mom, and the director of it thought the movie was so terrible, I got to rewrite all of my dialogue. I was like, okay, fine job. You creeped me out, man. And he was like, oh yeah. And then we exchanged Instagram accounts because he's like, I want you to call I want to know. He's like, do you still go to your, like, I go, no, I want nothing to do with my old school. He's like, well, if you ever want to call them and ask why they showed you that so many times, hit me up or whatever. I'm like, yeah, it's okay, John. And then Asher Angel, one time I had a booth near him. I felt so bad for that kid. He's like this hotshot teen actor. He's doing music too. And the only people coming to his booth were like gross old men with comic books for him to sign. And just all day long. I was like, oh my God. He was probably like, where are the ladies or the guys? It was like, no. Like the youngest person was probably in their 40s that came by to see him. Which I'm in my 40s. So, oops. And then I want to mention, I know I talked about this on my first episode of this year, but Cooper Andrews, I did Louisville PopCon with, and we were at the same hotel and stuff. And after the shooting I survived, he was there for me like all weekend, finding me, talking to me. We hung out every night, and he was just really good to talk to. Cool dude. So want to give a shout out to everybody's favorite foster dad here in Shazam, which is a movie I do like quite a bit. This hit me. I saw this movie before I met all these people, just putting that out there. This one surprised me because I kind of was like about it going in, and this kind of pulled at like some nostalgia. I don't know, some sort of nostalgic heartstrings or something, but I like the story of this found family, the foster kids. It just, I don't know, something was clicking for me with this one. Sandberg's ability to make a well done 80s superhero movie just merely in tone and thematics more than setting it and set dressing and just like, look, this takes place in present day, of course, but there's a lot of that feel to it, that sort of family movie, but kids feel they're getting away with some scary stuff or like over the top monster things that happen in this movie with violence and spooks and all that stuff. I think the cast chemistry is really great here. I like the low stakes, as I mentioned. There's the humor was mostly working for me. It just felt like DC didn't it didn't feel like there was pressure on this one at all. Like it felt like they were just like, you know what, we can make our movie. No, it doesn't have the cool action and spectacle like the other ones did, although I do like the humor of when Mark Strong and him are up in the sky and he's shouting all these terrible things at him. He's like, I can't hear you, dude. Like that one gets me.
They stole that from Kung Fu Panda 2, but that's also a masterpiece, so I'll let it go.
So I liked it. And yeah, I didn't expect all the shared super, like all those people. I felt like they saved that for the sequel or something, but no, it's right here. It's a good way of coming together. The going and like I'm not a foster child or anything. Like I know my biological, like I didn't grow up like that, but like I felt for this kid in his search for his mother. So, but yeah, no, I think it all works for me in this low stakes sort of way and is like one of my favorites of this run of DC movies. So we'll move on. Who wants to go next, Molly or Scott?
Oh, you can go next.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, yeah, obviously, again, I am slightly biased since it is another horror director, but this one, I think it had, like you mentioned, it had a lot more freedom to kind of just be a little bit more fun and lower stakes because it wasn't beholden to what was going on with the rest of this universe. And I also love all the found family, and I think the chemistry between the kids, both like the young versions and the adult versions, is fantastic. I also think the casting was amazing for the aged up versions of all of these kids. I mean, I never would have thought to cast Adam Brody as an older version of Jack Dylan Grazer, but it works so well. And just what I love about this one is that it's just a fun, funny, like superhero movie. Like you mentioned, it does feel very much almost like a Goonies kind of 80s film. But I also like that this one really speaks to why I think a lot of kids start reading comics. It's because they want to see themselves as these characters, as these superheroes. They like to imagine what it would be like if they were in that position, if they had all these abilities. And this film literally does that. It takes these kids who have no abilities and never would have dreamed of being able to do these things and just kind of throws it in their lap. And they're getting to live the dreams of millions of kids who read comic books. And I think that's what makes it so fun and heartfelt. And it makes you feel connected to the characters in a way. And it does feel very nostalgic. It kind of takes me back to my childhood when I watched this film. And I think that's a very special thing that they did. And it's so unique and it feels different than any of the other films in the DCEU.
And the bad guy's just a trench coat and an eye. Like,
yeah.
that's all. I mean, like, yeah.
It doesn't need to have all this like big flashy stuff. And I think they do such a great job with the comedy. Like the whole sequence when they're filming, testing to see what all of his different powers are, which honestly reminded me a little bit of season 1 of the show Heroes when
the good
Hayden
one.
Panettiere's character, kind of does something.
There were
similar,
more seasons to Heroes.
But just and that's something that kids would do. They would be like, okay, well, I know I can do this thing. Let's see how far I can take it, and let's see what I can really do.
It never forgets the Zachary Levi version is a kid, and the other ones either. The other ones don't have as much screen time, but there's a real chance a director cheats or forgets or something like, but Zachary Levi's version of Billy Batson is consistent the whole magically, like I calling a Zachary Levi performance magical, but it works start to finish with it. Like, and you can see growth in both of them, the young one and the older one. That is pretty impressive to pull off for like a little superhero movie, costume cape drama.
And with the kind of snowballing with the idea of like kids getting to live out their dreams as superheroes. I also love that this has all the kids have so many different backgrounds that they're coming from. They're different ethnicities. There's obviously Grazier's character has a disability, and the fact that they're able to do these things that they never would have imagined, I think is also something so special that also makes this a weirdly heartwarming superhero film. And heartwarming isn't a word that I use with superhero films very often, but this one is definitely there's something very sweet and honest about it in a weird way. And I think that they kind of had like lightning in a bottle with this one. And I don't know if it's something that another superhero film is going to be able to capture.
Right. Exactly. Scott, why do you hate this movie and are a monster?
This may be my favorite DC films film.
Yeah.
It's a close 4-way tie, but well, I don't want to spoil it. Yeah. I had a conversation with one of the producers of Lights Out before it came out. I don't think it was director David Sandberg, and frankly, I wouldn't have recognized him if it was. And the producer mentioned that when they wrote the screenplay to Lights Out, they wrote a version of it that had no scares, no genre elements, to make sure that the film worked as a human drama. And I don't know if they did that for this, but it sure as hell feels like they did. Because this film absolutely works as an emotionally raw, in a kid-friendly way, an emotionally raw and uncompromising foster care melodrama in a way that reminded me of Antoine Fisher, Shoplifters, Instant Family, other films of that nature. And it amazingly also works as both a DC superhero film that takes place in the same world as Batman v Superman. This was the film that, in better times, like, okay, they clearly don't need to reboot, because if they can make a movie like this that still makes sense being in the same world as Dawn of Justice and Suicide Squad and Aquaman, then that's the ball game. I mean, that's what everybody said they wanted. I mean, this is in the Walter Hamada era, and unfortunately, he got libeled after the fact because the discourse seemed to blame him for crap that happened during Justice League, even though it was what happened during Justice League that had him getting put in charge of the DC universe in the first place. That was a reaction to Justice League disappointing. And it made sense because he's the guy that him and James Wan shepherded the Conjuring universe, which is still the only fully functional, entirely successful post-Avengers cinematic universe. So it made sense that they would bring those guys to do this one. And this is a film where the human characters are so charming and sympathetic and detailed and just delightful that I almost don't want them to put on capes and go off and fight crime. It's almost more fun to them just watch them hang out and talk to their, the foster parents that are, this is a film full of what I like to call unexpected goodness, in which, it's easy to make somebody cry if you kill a dog or you have something horribly tragic happen. But it's a lot harder to move people via people being unexpectedly good to each other.
Yeah.
And that is, for me at least, far more moving because of that. And this is a film filled with unexpected goodness. And I was unaware enough of the Shazam comics that I was completely surprised by the third act turn where they all get powers. And I thought, God, this is the best fucking superhero plot twist since Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
And what a wonderful, wonderful payoff. And it feels like it's a payoff. It's a reward.
Mhm.
It's the idea that these kids, they all get to play in this sandbox. And I love that the villain, he's not so much sympathetic, but he has such a dramatic opening backstory that you're like, yeah, I can see why he's a bitter bastard. And the film, I don't want to say effortlessly because this takes work, but it does blend foster care drama with superhero tropes, with a just a little bit too scary Amblin era horror film.
Yeah.
And I remember I saw this with Aaron Newworth at a really early press screening, which that's, if they show it to me early, that's a sign they know they think it's good. But I remember during the boardroom scene when he's walking through and just killing the shit out of everybody in these ridiculously over top ways, I just turned to Aaron and goes, I think I fucking love this movie.
Well, and then the people in the glass and it's like,
Yeah.
fogging up. Oh, it's so good.
And it's so gleefully violent in a way that's fun. And again, as you said, when it's a way that's like, as a kid, you feel like you're getting away with something.
Yeah.
Which is why it drove me nuts. Some of the discourse, not all of it, but because the film got very good reviews. But it's like, oh, the film's too violent for kids. They'll scare them. Bullshit. This movie is exactly violent enough for kids.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, speaking of kid, like this is one, this movie has the odd distinction that it was a superhero movie that made my top 10 the year it came out.
Mine too.
And my family and I have watched this since the theater. We've watched this a couple times. Like we don't get to watch, the same movies a lot if they're not like some sort of like, we watch this every year at this time or something like that. But this one has come up that let's watch that one. And when the new one came out, we got to watch the original again. So it really sat with them. And I don't even like rewatch Marvel movies. I watch them in the theater, I review the 4K, and then I really don't get back to them again. But for Shazam to have been on my conscience, to have returned to so much, like that's something it's still like special. It's delivered to me in an odd way. And I only knew of the character when it was there was the old black and white movie serial when it was Captain Marvel, and Captain Marvel said Shazam, and then I know rights changed, and now for the better, I think we have two distinct characters out of thing. And I think Shazam's a cool name. I don't know why there's a complaint. No one complaining is old enough to have been there at the turn. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're just being a complete asshole.
I remember seeing this is Captain Marvel serials when I was just a lad.
I got them when I was in the 90s as a kid at Farmore Drugstore, and it was a VHS tape. I still have it, and I have the Blu-ray edition they came out with, and guess where I put it? Next to Shazam in my S's. So suck it.
That's also funny because when I Googled this film just to pull up the IMDb and stuff, on the Google search, it shows Zachary Levi credited as Captain Marvel. And I was like, something's not quite right here.
Yeah.
This isn't adding up.
The guy who says Shazam for his powers, you can call him Shazam.
Yeah.
That makes a little sense, I think.
Somebody needed to tell Jane Johnson that, but
yeah. So yeah, I really am very high on this one, and for all the reasons we've all said, like this was a special one, and it comes after the big. It's a nice come down from Aquaman when going in this order to something like this, and this came out.
I mean,
just a couple months after
Aquaman and Shazam, and I didn't love Joker, but I was thrilled by how successful it was. By the end of 2019, it's like they're gonna fucking pull this off.
Yeah.
You're going to have a situation where, Marvel is basically like Law and Order, where it's always at least this good, and sometimes it's very good. But you're going to have DC, which is like Homicide: Life on the Street, which is less popular, more idiosyncratic, and has lower lows. But bam, when it hits, it hits.
They roll the dice. Like I have said, that's the one thing I enjoy about DC is I don't know what I'm getting when I'm going in, and that kind of excites me.
To a more generic comparison is, Marvel is Pixar and DC is DreamWorks, which okay, but sometimes you get a fucking How to Train Your Dragon too.
Yeah. Which going off that, in the same world as Shazam, we have Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn, which is our next movie. But now there will be multiple. There always have been. Their voice actors count, Scott. They're people. I've met many. They're people. They're very nice and good at their craft. Which came out in 2020.
Can I help you?
I'm here to report a terrible crime. Joker and I broke up. And a lot of people want me dead. Oh, shit. He's after all of us now. Unless we all want to die, we're gonna have to work together. With you. Are we ready? Woo!
And it's directed by Kathy Yan, written by Christina Hodson. One writer. This is the first DC movie with one writer. Because Joker wasn't just Todd Phillips, right? I know we're not covering. We're not doing Joker unless the people demand it. We're doing Joker. Molly, we're doing Joker and the Batman. People demand it. And also, as of now, no one has sent us Batgirl. So please, we would, if you'd like to have it covered, and you will be anonymous, you can send us Batgirl. We will talk about Batgirl. Put a watermark on it, so well, maybe not. You don't want to have that. So, anyways, this is the first one with one writer, not counting characters created by all that stuff. So, and stars Margot Robbie, Rosie Perez, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Journey Smollett, Ewan McGregor, Ella J. Basco, Ali Wong, and Chris Messina. After splitting with the Joker, Harley Quinn joins superheroines Black Canary, Huntress, and Renee Montoya to save a young girl from an evil crime lord in a movie that says DC, but what if Guy Ritchie, right? That's kind of the vibe here, which that's a positive thing.
It was better than that year's Guy Ritchie movie, which came out like a week beforehand.
Right.
You don't hate The Gentleman, but this is better.
This is better. All right, Molly, thoughts on Birds of Prey?
Hey, this is probably going to be a controversial opinion, but this is my favorite film of the DCEU.
Not in this house. Not in this house.
No, it may not be my favorite, but it's up there.
Not in this. Not controversial.
This is where it's going to sound crazy. This is actually probably in my top 5 superhero films in general. That includes all of the other properties as well. But this one, I've been told that it is not super accurate to the comic, but again, I haven't read the comics, so I don't care.
Adaptation. It's allowed to be different, but I have always preached, there's a difference. Enjoy your comics.
You know what else isn't accurate to the comics? The Dark Knight.
Yeah. But this is such a fun film. First of all, the cast is so incredibly stacked. I think despite Suicide Squad, I think Margot Robbie is a fantastic Harley Quinn. I mean, honestly, that woman can do no wrong. I would be happy with her in any role. Rosie Perez is one of the most amazing actors. I love everything that she's in. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, amazing. Journey Smollett, I think that she does not get enough credit for how fantastic she is. And her role in this film as Dinah Lance / Black Canary is so wonderful. I honestly wish that she had been able to get her own film as that character. I would watch the crap out of that. Ewan McGregor makes a hilarious villain. And Chris Messina as his little henchman, which I don't know what this says about me, and I probably shouldn't admit this, but I find Messina weirdly attractive in this film.
Oh, there's no shame in that.
I mean,
you should hear about some of Scott's crushes.
Absolutely.
It's so fun. And if
Xenia on a top can crush me in her thighs anytime she wants.
I love that it's a breakup film as well as a buddy comedy, as well as a superhero film. It's all these different things wrapped into one. And the dynamics between the characters, it just works. The way they're written and how different all of the characters are, but then the way that they're able to come together. and try to save Cassandra Cain. It's so well written, and the characters are fantastic, and visually I think this one feels like it is straight out of Harley Quinn's brain. This is what is inside her brain, especially the scene when she goes into the precinct and just absolutely annihilates everyone in there. And it's just it's poppy. It feels like a comic book. The visuals, I kept expecting Pow to pop up on the screen when she was hitting people in the face. Like, it's
get flowers and stuff. That's fun.
Well, then you couldn't see the blood and gore.
That's true. Yeah, and that's another thing. Like, on top of like the glitter and the pops of color, there's still like quite a bit of violence in this. So it has a little bit of something for everyone. And I just think the humor in this one too. It's some of it is subtle and some of it's more in your face, but it's so layered and works well. Like, I love that she has the hyena named Bruce. Like, it's funny because it's a hyena and it's a laughing hyena because she's a Harlequin, and it's funny because she has a crush on Bruce Wayne without knowing who he is. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just all the layers to it is so great, and it's one of those films that I can watch over and over again and I don't get sick of it because it is just such pure entertainment. And I wish that we could have gotten more films with these women in it because they are all just so fantastic, and I think they're perfectly cast. Yeah, like I could gush about this film a lot, so I'm gonna say
all right.
Yeah.
Scott.
I also love it. I mean, if you ask me what my favorite DC films are, I mean, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam, Birds of Prey, mix and match. I really don't give a shit what the ranking is. Just depends on what the day is. This is a wonderful, delightful, pinball, cocaine-fueled crime comedy of a movie. Literally in one scene. And it's frustrating because a lot of the reasons why it works artistically are some of the same reasons why it wasn't a financial success. It is an R-rated movie, which, I warned them about this a few years beforehand, just because most female-driven action movies are R-rated movies. So it's less unique in the marketplace, alongside something like Resident Evil, Underworld, Atomic Blonde, et cetera, et cetera. And it earns its R rating. There, the villain is a vicious, rapey bastard. And the film is very upfront about, conflicts that are specific to gender. And I still think it's incredibly fun and escapist and all that jazz. But, it is a real movie that's made by a singular auteur who actually has shit to say in a way that I think doesn't always play well to the Twitter discourse world. That being said, the action scenes are, again, because of the R rating, the action scenes are incredibly coherent and, authentic and brutal in a way that you couldn't do in a PG-13 movie. And I know that they brought in the 8711 crew, or they were one of the producers anyway, to do some action reshoots, and obviously, good. This is a case where reshoots were a good idea. As far as I know, it didn't change the story in any real way. And the performances are just delightful. Yes, Mary Elizabeth Winstead stood out. She was basically playing the Huntress like a character from the Tick cartoon. And I mean that as an incredible compliment.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was almost like, okay, what if you take this character who, witnessed her parents being killed at a young age by criminals, and what would she realistically be like as an adult? And realistically, she'd be socially awkward and probably a little unhinged in a, relatively crowd-pleasing fashion. And she is just hysterical in this picture in a very low-key way. And again, I mean, to get into the broader points, I mean, and again, alternate histories, yada, yada, yada. Can you imagine what the reputation for DC would have been like if there had been no Justice League movie? There is no Justice League movie. You get Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam, Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
what the DC reputation would be like at that point. Because I will put those 4 films alongside any of the 4 best Marvel films you can think of, without blinking. They are spectacular comic book entertainments, and they are everything that we said we wanted out of the DC universe, and that they are different in terms of genre and budget and size and scale and intent. They are interconnected without being, driven hard by continuity. They are character over plot, which frankly, I think that's an issue with some of the Zack Snyder pictures early on, is that they, the big picture was more important, in the same way that a lot of the Lost ripoffs were like the mythology first and character second.
Right.
And it still breaks my heart that Walter Hamada got frankly slimed in 2020 and 2021 when he came in after Justice League and did the job and got the DC universe on track. And I genuinely believe that absent the COVID pandemic and absent the constant regime changes at Warner Brothers, DC would be doing fine today.
Mhm.
And that we got 4 films this good, regardless of what came afterwards, I think is a fucking miracle.
Yeah.
And I think it's a tragedy the film did not do particularly well. Although, again, they probably should have just called it Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. Commercially, maybe they should have tried for a PG-13. But again, it's a frustrating situation where a lot of the reasons why the film financially failed is also why it's artistically triumphed.
Yeah.
And it was, contrary to my belief, it was not a COVID casualty. The film was basically done by the time theaters started shutting down.
Yeah.
It flopped on opening weekend and didn't recover. It wasn't marketing, because the trailers are great, and they played in front of it. They played in front of Joker. They played in front of Bad Boys for Life. People knew the film was coming out. They just made the conscientious choice to say no, thank you. Because once again, the internet claims that people want Birds of Prey, but they actually show up for Joker.
Yeah.
And that will never stop pissing me off.
Yeah.
I'll say here, like the 4 films you mentioned, the Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam, and now Birds of Prey. Like, yes, absolutely. And those 4, I've probably watched more than, I would say, maybe any Marvel film. Like, these are ones I've repeated. I saw Birds of Prey, I was like, holy shit, yes. Even more than Joker, this is DC saying, this is what we can do, and you're scared to do Marvel.
Yes.
You can't do this.
Yeah.
Dare you. You would, dude, Kevin Feige would lose his shit if something like this got turned into him. And that's the beautiful thing about this movie.
And frankly, that's no criticism of Marvel, because Marvel, up to a point, was very successful doing its own thing.
Yeah, and Robbie,
yeah.
Well, Robbie's one of the best things about that first Suicide Squad movie. She holds her own with Will Smith. She makes the cars a thing for herself, and they recognize that. That's good. They recognize that over more than Leto's Joker or any other character in that Suicide Squad. They're like, okay, we need to hold on to this. And they do. They give her own movie. They let her front and center. They add some surrounding things. I'm happy as it can be to see a Huntress there and an actor who I have enjoyed. I know you'll probably claim Sky High, Scott, but Final Destination 3, when I was doing the subtitles for that, going, who is this? And following her ever since, because she's a wonderful actress. And I like what she's got going on here. It's so funny. And they're not afraid to like crack, but still like go on with things. And you mentioned Jerry Smollett. She's so good, but like it's impressive because she gets the unfun part of all of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
She has to
just like Ray Fisher.
She has to keep
I think
straight.
He's
Yeah.
excellent in both versions. It's just he's the unfun one.
Yeah, because Rosie Perez is given a full-on arc and gets some hot-headed stuff and gets the I have to turn on what I was accustomed to. Harley gets to go crazy, and then Huntress is a ridiculous kind of parody, or as Scott said, the realistic situation. But it's set in that world. It's interesting. Yeah. This is just full of ideas, not holding back. The action is unique to itself, just visual. They have the musical number in this movie. It's great that the playhouse setting at the end. That's awesome. So Harley, so that with mentioned the jailbreak is there. Just it's this movie's I called it wonderfully singular because we're not getting any more, but it just throw it to someone. I showed this to my son for the first time when we were watching for this. He loved it. He at the beginning was like, "Did he just cut that guy's face off?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Huh, sweet." I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, and he was just really. He's like, he was, and it's funny because I did I let him watch Suicide Squad before the. No, he watched it after, but he was so disappointed there wasn't going to be more, Margot Robbie Harley because he's like she really works. And the one thing they never did, they never forced her into any of the Justice League shit.
Yeah,
they let her have. She has her own world. Affleck shows up for some cameo in the first Suicide Squad. That don't count. She's living in her own DC world, which is a fun, colorful, wild one. I will tell you this: 4 months after this movie, and it was a lot during the pandemic when we were all bored and this movie came out on 4K and I was watching it. I was trying to make this breakfast egg sandwich.
Oh, yes.
I was just like, I want that. This movie made me want that. That's a thing from this movie that I was like, okay. And it's so interesting. These characters live in a fully realized world that I feel like we can relate to, whereas Marvel, it's kind of like this, asexual, just mono, I'm just a citizen going to work. Oh no, an attack. Thank you, Captain America. I will go back to life. And these people interact realistically with the people around them. There's, she has a landlord. There's all, it's, I don't know. There's something that feels like it's got a pulse here when it comes to what's happening outside of the superheroes.
I think that's partially because, and these were, to be fair, I mean, I don't know if you call Birds of Prey a part one, because technically it's a sequel to Suicide Squad. But, unlike Suicide Squad, there's a lot of superhero fiction that you get to a point where everybody on screen is a superhero. And they only interact with other superpowered people, either heroes or villains. Yeah. And this was a problem with Heroes after season 1. It's a huge fucking problem with the CW stuff. And I say that as a fan, and that's one of the reasons I think I like Shazam. So one reason I like Shazam, the first Wonder Woman, and then Birds of Prey is that these extraordinary characters are constantly interacting with the real world.
Yeah.
And that is interesting. That's part of the appeal of the stories. If it's just, the Avengers in the mansion hanging out with each other, I would argue that's boring to a certain extent.
If you want that, you get the X-Men.
Yeah.
That's what that's what they do. That's what you want, the superhero melodrama between the groups, which is why also when stuff like this, I'm also more, when I was doing my comic book reading as a youngin', I was more singular. I never cared for the team ups or the once in a while Superman showed up in a Batman comic. That's cool.
Get your crossover out of my stories.
Yeah, I was just the singular stories and stuff and it just got too garbled with that. But I did like the X-Men. That's why I loved the X-Men, and I liked that that was the grouping of superheroes I would like, because they were all conjoined and always going to be together and always had they had a focus on what was going on. And they did interact in weird ways with the world. But yeah, and Huntress, obviously, oddly enough, was there when I started reading comics, because she came shortly when Tim Drake was being introduced. She was around similar time, I believe. Death of Robin, Tim Drake, Huntress came around. The Cry of the Huntress was, I believe, her first arc. I have it somewhere in my chest.
I think speaking to the idea of them interacting with everyday people too, I think it's also great that really half of this group are just normal people. They don't have only one of them has any kind of actual powers, and
she barely uses it.
Yeah. That's true.
And so I think that makes it, again, it makes it kind of more accessible in a different way than Shazam, but also kind of similar. It's a very different, but it makes it so if Renee Montoya can just be a everyday detective, but she's kicking ass right alongside Black Canary and Harley Quinn, why can't I do that? I mean, I can't because I don't leave my house, but
yeah.
But I think that's part of what's so great about this, and just the attention to detail in it. The set designs are fantastic. Like you mentioned earlier, that whole climax in the fun house is so amazing, and it makes the violence fun.
Yeah.
And even like the set design in the precinct when she's in like the I assume that's a big evidence room and stuff, and just and the little details that are even in there, like if you're really paying attention to the things on the shelf, there are things that reference other events that happened not in this film, and it's just, and even the costume design is so fantastic in this one. Harley's outfits are amazing.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I remember a lot of people, and by people I mean men, complaining about Huntress's outfit in this, saying like, oh, it doesn't give her any shape or anything. It's like, that's not the point of her outfit. She's
Yes,
there to
because you
kick people's
totally turned her
ass.
down if she came up to you in a bar.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
She's wearing a utility outfit because she's there to murder people. She's not there to look hot.
Yep.
And that's
But
like,
yet,
yeah, she's still very hot. But it's just, I think that that's such a great thing, because none of these women are, and I think that's probably why a lot of people were mad about it. None of these women were there for the pleasure of men. And I think in a lot of ways that did hurt the film, because the main demographic of a lot of these superhero films are going to be men. But at the same time, that's one of the reasons why people like me love this film. It feels, having a woman direct, having a woman write it, having the entire core cast be women, and the main men in it are all villains. Like it's so different than any of the other superhero films that have come out really in the last 20 years.
yeah.
And it's so unique, and it's kind of like, I know I already said this, but it's another lightning in a bottle kind of situation, where I don't know if this is something that's going to be replicated again, at least for another decade, if not longer. But I'm glad that we got what we did, even though I wish we got a hell of a lot more of it.
Yeah, no, this is absolutely what I want more of from, if we're going to have superhero movies around, I want this. I want the wild, like stylistic, just someone's vision of what this is, rather than to a T from the page or something like that. Because I'm sorry, I've talked about this, where I'm like, I have more than all the great Batman stuff that I really love. I have it all, but I want to see some crazy Batman shit. Like the Batman was fine, but it was nothing new, even though every time it comes around and they're like, oh, I did it darker and newer. And it's like, it's kind of stuff we've seen, but like, I want like Gotham by Gaslight, where I always mention that one because that's like doing a really interesting Jack the Ripper, Batman in the Jack the Ripper era, how it looks back then, or doing, someone maybe do Aronofsky's script where he was a homeless guy and Alfred was a mechanic. Like, do that one. I'd
settle for the run based on the 70s stuff, the Cape Crusader era.
Yeah.
I think Batman Forever came closest, but I mean, just once can we get the blue and gray with the yellow oval?
Thank you. They got close in the Flash. They were so close in the Flash. I was like, oh, it's blue and gray, but no, not the. Why are they so against the yellow oval? Why? Fancy.
And it's and again, the film underperforming is frustrating, because again, it shows that people lie when they say what they actually want to see in theaters, not just in terms of diversity and inclusivity, just in terms of originality and new to you stuff and what have you. I mean, this was a case where Warner Brothers hired a female Asian filmmaker that had one indie film that hadn't even opened yet. This person was so unknown, I had never even heard of her. And they gave her an $80 million R-rated DC comic superhero movie. I mean, that's kind of how the system is supposed to work, and that's what we say we want. And I hope to see more of her. It doesn't have to be in this world. I mean,
her next movie is called The Freshening with John Boyega, and
I will watch it.
She's on my, like, I saw this movie and she's like on my list. She did an episode of Succession a couple years ago, but like Kathy Ann, you are someone to watch because
And like, a lot
this
of the
movie.
discourse around the Marvels. I don't give a shit if Nia DaCosta ever makes another superhero movie. As long as
Please
she gets
don't,
to make
Nia. You have
Oh,
you
yeah,
are
get
brilliant.
out.
Please
Get
don't
out while
go.
you can.
Run. I want more.
Get out of Derry while you still can.
Yeah. I want.
You'll float too.
Here's the thing.
Um,
Marvel's is fun, but
yeah.
there's that woman has so much talent I've seen oozing from Candyman and that I want to see her just. I would blank check Nia DaCosta. I would give her a blank check because I
Also,
get
what
her
is
her
with
black
all of
phone.
these? What is with all of these horror directors and overlapping with superhero projects?
Well, I think part of that was, at least for DC, I mean, you had James Wan doing Aquaman because he was a name and he wanted to do it, and then once Hamada took over, it made sense to try to get horror. I think as a genre, and you guys are both more horror experts than I am, so you can call me full of shit if you want. But I do think there's some similarity in terms of heightened emotion and heightened spectacle and mixing tones and a certain amount of plausible grounded fantasy.
making $5 look like 10.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
That's what
Juan
Juan is very good at.
Aquaman cost $165 million. That movie looks like it cost $1 billion.
All his movies, and I've said this
Yeah.
about him and Lee Wan-el, like they make movies that like cost like $2 look like 100 million, where movies that are 100 million don't even look like they're 20. Like
Yeah.
they make the most of every dollar. If you go see, even say the movie itself, the story of the movie you didn't like, you got your money's worth with a James Wan movie.
Yeah.
100%. You saw all the money on the screen. You saw someone maximizing effort. Like that's what I have to say with him. And so far, Lee Wan-el with the 3 films he's done so far. I believe it's 3. Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's tax incentives and rebates and exchange rates, but how the fuck the Invisible Man only cost $7 million? I'll never know.
Seriously. Look what they do. Insidious. That first one.
Is that what, $1 million?
Yeah. And people aren't making, yeah.
Speaking of the two of them, my theory, this isn't actually a theory, I'm just being stupid, is that James Wan and Leigh Whannell got together and they like both read the script, script of The Invisible Man. And Leigh Whannell said, okay, I'm going to go off and make the straight version of this movie. And Wan said, okay, I'm going to make the version of this movie after licking some toads. And that's how we got Malignant. Because there's some very structural similarities between those two films. I have to assume they kind of at least talk shop about them respectively.
Oh yeah, they're good. And the thing I like about them is they love to move the camera.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing is so good. And like, there's a move that I like with Juan where he always does this where, and Lee Wan-el does it sometimes too, where it's like, it's focused on an action and then someone throws them down like that. I always notice those in there.
Yep.
Those are always fun. It's in a Fast and the Furious one he did too. Like I believe The Rock throws Statham down or something like that onto a coffee table, and I'm like, there it is.
It's not one of the more it's not one of the buzzier sequences of that franchise. I think the first act forest chase in Furious 7 may be the best sustained action sequence of that entire franchise.
Right.
And as far as the action scenes in Aquaman, I'm not saying I want a Super Smash Brothers movie because I'm 43 years old, but those fight scenes feel like Super Smash Brothers the movie, and I mean that as a compliment.
There you go. I saw the Mario movie, it wouldn't hurt. Yeah. So cool. Yeah. So Margot Robbie, unfortunately, steals scenes from Suicide Squad, has this banger movie here, which in the next Suicide Squad movie, she'll get her own like side story and focus, which I like, and more good stuff. And
I think commercially speaking, unfortunately,
it's just not.
Folks like us were wrong about the extent to which Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn was a marquee character.
But if you go to conventions, like her cosplaying took off.
Oh yeah,
crazy, and like it used to be like you would count the Harley Quinns and count the Deadpools at a convention. That's one thing we would do every weekend. But like with her, it was like her line took off in a way that like had just variations. It's like so
Well, yeah,
nice.
and you know, I remember the first Suicide Squad, and this is the least of this movie's problems. But yeah, I was a little like, oh, I wish it looked a bit more like the comic book because I kind of enjoy that sometimes. But in terms of cosplay friendly costumes, yeah, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah,
And it's honestly, this is one of the this is actually one of the reasons why I was initially a bit nervous to come on and talk about the DCEU, because of a lot of the toxicity that happens online around this entire cinematic universe. But I think what hurts, not just Birds of Prey, but like then the Suicide Squad with her, because it's still Margot Robbie and Harley Quinn. I think a lot of the people who were mad about what happened with like the Iron Cut or whatever supposedly that is, and then mad about everything that happened with Justice League, I think that anger towards those projects was then projected on
Oh God, yes.
Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. And it's because I remember seeing pictures of people who were going to stores and putting like Justice League stickers on the cover of the Blu-ray for this film.
yeah, I do remember. Yeah, childish shit.
So
Yes.
unhinged to me. And I think that
We call
unfortunately
those people
a lot
losers.
I unfortunately I think a lot of that toxicity and that anger and that vitriol, like it bled into this, and I think that unfortunately ultimately hurt the box office a lot for this film and the Suicide Squad, because people were just so mad about it. And which
you
is
know, even Wonder Woman 84 ended up being got thrown to the HBO Max gods, and it was a sacrifice to the streaming gods. I still, sorry, I interrupted you. Keep going.
Oh no. I that was the basically what I wanted to say.
Yeah,
it's frustrating, because I think there were a lot of people that wanted this and were so happy that we got it, but it's just there was a much larger and louder population that was making it very clear that they were pissed off about it, and they were going to do their best to ruin everyone else's enjoyment in the process.
Despite probably enjoying this movie if they'd have given it a chance and watched it.
Yeah,
that's the thing. For what principles are you like? Yeah,
I mean, for God, I mean, you know, and not. I will never understand people that put bigotry over lechery. Because for me, I'm always going to prioritize lechery over bigotry. No, but jokes aside, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think the discourse around the DCU, and frankly, most of it was Snyder related, let's be honest. I think it poisoned the entire industry. It turned Rotten Tomatoes into a weaponized tool for an SEO driven media. It basically was the start of every single IP having branches of fandom that were like a cult.
It turned into like a lot of this is I bring this up a lot, and stuff has turned in our film culture this way after taking a lot, and our political culture is it's become like sports is infused into it, where you pick your team and you stick loyally by this team. Like it's like art isn't a sport. There's like scoring isn't that important. I always I like when I read people's stuff and I can get whether they liked it or not out of their words, rather than just skip it down to like a little score at the end and be like, oh, okay, but like it took hold with movies between this DC stuff and Star Wars, a fantastic Star Wars movie. Come at me, bros. That it all of a sudden they want to sync score, and it's like, and then you realize that people don't even know how to use Rotten Tomatoes right, because for what is there, it is absolutely a nice tool. And I always hear I've heard people talking about Rotten Tomatoes conversation. I don't get why this, and I'm like, hold up, pump the brakes, click the button, see the percentage, you can click it. Now what's that say? That's your score. That's what they all added up to at the end.
Consensus.
And they're like, yeah. I'm like, because correct me if I'm wrong, both of you, but if essentially a movie, every critic scored it 6 out of 10, it would be 100%.
Yes.
Now, do you think
Yes.
a 6 out of 10 is like a great movie? No, but that's the illusion of the Rotten Tomatoes.
Often when you have films that are like 95% fresh or whatever, sometimes they really are just that good. But also you have a film like Get Out that you either think it's a masterpiece or at worst you think it's a very well-made piece of meat and potatoes entertainment.
Yeah.
Ergo, the vast majority of critics are going to say it's at least 3 stars or better.
Yeah. And 3-star films are fine, folks. 3-star films are fine. 2.5 is okay. 2.5 is okay even. Like,
depends.
I use a 10-point scale. So for me, those aren't great scores.
no, 5, no. But 2.5, you could flip a coin at that point. A 3 is like, 3's fine. They did like job. So, because 2.5 is like, well, it wasn't quite for them, but maybe it takes me over. I don't know. So there's that. But yeah, this
the good news, for what it's worth, is that as insane as the online discourse now is about everything, at the end of the day, they don't move the needle in terms of general audience. Not for Captain Marvel, not for Green Book, which despite all of us, it's so problematic, blah, 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 it's still won Best Picture and grossed $300 million worldwide. All the schmucks about, it wasn't on, despite, and fuck Disney for doing this, but it wasn't online polling overseas that took The Little Mermaid overseas. It was that no one gave a shit about The Little Mermaid overseas, just like no one gave a shit about Solo, a Star Wars story overseas.
Yeah.
And getting to your point, one reason why the toxicity is almost worse than what you see in sports teams is that so many of these fandoms have co-opted the language of social justice. So now it's a moral point of view, whether you like or don't like these films, whether you support or don't support these films. So, now it's a matter of, right and wrong, good and evil, not just hometown pride, which is a different can of worms. And
not just, I went and saw a movie, or I don't have time for that one.
I think The Last Jedi is the best fucking Star Wars movie ever made. I think The Rise of Skywalker is the worst Star Wars movie ever made. That being said, I would wager among general audiences, there's probably a 10% differential where they went and they saw it once or twice. Maybe they took their kids a second time. That was a good time, whatever, and they moved on with their lives. People that wanted to Star Trek Into Darkness, they didn't come out saying, "Oh, worst Star Trek movie ever." They thought it was a polished, big budget, action spectacular with some good actors and a fun cast, and that was fun, whatever. And they moved on with their lives.
And it's funny, Scott Pilgrim was the warning to all this, and it never heeded. Like the superhero movies just were something people were getting into and wanted in the general populace, and not the online people.
And as far as the troll thing now, the problem is now it's a self-sustaining troll economy. You have people on YouTube, this is how they pay their bills. So they will never stop because they can't afford to.
I cannot. This is slightly on topic, but what's the deal with the picture of a person going, and then like the words like really big? Does that attract people? I will never do that, folks. Like my listener, I don't care if I have always told I am in it because I enjoy this. I like to do it. If you want to listen, if you come along for the ride, that's great. So if you hated this episode and you're like, screw all them for liking the DC movies that I hate because I worship Snyder, which we have praised his talents, just maybe aren't on the same wavelength as the film as you.
Other movies. I love Sucker Punch.
So
I'm not weirdo.
But I don't get why that's an attractive thing. Like everybody does it. And that's what I found in the more we get with internet and tools and things come back, things become easier, but it ends up being yes, it's cool that more of us can make film, where I can make this podcast and stuff like that. But then it just becomes copying all the time because not everybody's the artist that they think they are. And then I just see this endless thing of comment, if someone's like, reaction to blah blah blah, it's like, oh, I must click that, or no, that guy's face is funny. I don't get that at all, and that's all it's consumed with. And this is the era where this starts coming to life.
Yeah, and now and again, we had a chance to nip this shit in the bud in the mid 2010s. The boycott episode 7 movement in November, December of 2015. We knew it was false. Because people did the research and they said 96% of the online discourse around that hashtag was people saying this is stupid.
And the same person, and there's a lot of people that is the same person saying it over and over.
Yeah.
And over and over and over and over.
I genuinely believe it's a small, I don't know how small, but it is a faction of assholes that hop from one IP to another and try to roil up the discourse. And you have pundits that think that people bitching about black hobbits actually means something.
Well,
it doesn't mean jack shit.
Here's another problem, and I don't mean to get this going in like 8 directions, but we live in this era where everybody's a fan of everything all the time. Like they know everything about everything. Like, reaction video. I know all about that. I don't like stick to your stuff, man. Like nobody, I don't know. And
there's
go ahead.
Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna say there's this mentality too that like, especially since a lot of these properties like Star Wars and DC, Marvel and everything, they've been around for a very, very long time. And there's that whole mentality that it's if something new comes out that's part of that you grew up with and you don't like it, then it's gonna ruin your childhood. And I'll admit, I even was guilty of saying things like that, like, I don't know, back when like Transformers came out, but I was a lot younger and I'm an adult now and I can process things like an adult. And I understand that if something comes out that is connected to something I grew up with and I don't like it, that's totally fine. I don't need to watch it again. I can move on with my life and let other people enjoy it. And I'll just enjoy what I grew up on. And I don't understand why there's this end all be all where if it doesn't live up to what you think it should be, then it needs to be ripped to shreds.
Right. Or taken down or restarted or like, and I will say though, we did wait and get Bumblebee, which I was very big fan of.
And it almost bombed. That was the one Transformers film that was saved by China.
There you go. But yeah, you're right. They want to trash it out, and then you see the people like, well, they need to restart this. What? So you can hate it again real quick? Like,
yeah. Oh, because that's exactly what would happen.
Yeah,
it would just be the same cycle starting all over again.
Yeah, and for me, the weird realization has come now that like I grew up, loved Star Wars and everything like that, and now I'm just not as excited about it as I used to be. Like, if you'd have told young me that I'd be getting it all the time, like all this stuff happening, I'd be like, whoa, but it's like, but you're going to be like, cause I hit like a peak with Last Jedi and then like, I was okay with Solo and then like Rise of Skywalker, The Mandalorian first season, okay. But when they started like, we're getting into Star Wars
when
chat.
Luke Skywalker showed up.
When Luke Skywalker showed up, like, cause when I saw that, I'm like, oh, is this going to be Ezra Bridger? Because that was the stuff that was linking all this. And then it was like, here's Luke. And I saw the scenes and I knew exactly what the fucking online shit was going to be with that. And I was like, but I watched the shows and stuff, but I'm not like more Star Wars. Like it's just wild. I'd like to see one hit the theaters again, but they have trouble with that. And it's not, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but Kathy Kennedy is someone who has produced some of my favorite films, a lot of people's favorite films of all time. And I feel like even though she gets a lot of shit, she's done some good and has a lot to run here with one of the most hard-nosed in the asshole franchises fan-wise that can be. So I
think the same edict that is harming Marvel, put out a shit ton of Disney Plus shows or else.
Yeah.
Isn't doing Star Wars any favors. And not to toot my own horn, but I fucking warned about that in 2018. I was exactly old enough to know, watch Who Wants to Be a Millionaire go from a sweeps only ratings powerhouse to it's just another game show that airs every night. Nobody cares anymore.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, that was Birds of Prey.
Jesus. This is all getting cut out.
No, it really fits that comes to fruition in this era. A lot of that has happened. And then we now head into a pandemic where things get halted. Well, Wonder Woman's already been delayed at this point. It should have been out by now, right? Before Birds of Prey?
No.
Wasn't it fall? Wasn't it like 2019?
Birds of Prey came out in February.
Came out in February.
Wonder Woman was scheduled for June,
Right.
and it wasn't until Wonder Woman got delayed first, I think, to August.
Okay.
A couple weeks after theaters shut down in early March.
See, I thought there was a
Birds of
delay
Prey came out
before I thought there was a delay before the pandemic too.
No,
But no. That was just James
well,
Bond.
I apologize. Yes.
Oh, okay.
I apologize. It was moved from, I think, December 1st, 2019 to November 1st or November 2nd, whatever, 2019, and then to June, the first weekend in June of 2020.
Okay.
So it wasn't it was just delayed because, they wanted a little bit more time, and I think they were moving a lot of their big guns out of the way because they knew Disney was on a warpath.
Right.
I mean, at the time, that was a good idea. Top Gun Maverick, Wonder Woman, No Time to Die, even Death on the Nile, Sonic the Hedgehog. There was a presumption that they were going to let Disney have their fire sale because, they knew that Disney would never approach those heights ever again. So they have not. And then in 2020, it was going to be, okay, now we're going to be on even playing field again.
Yeah.
And made sense at the time.
Right. Okay.
But when Birds of Prey, bombs, let's be honest, does 200 million on an 80 budget, which isn't great. It's like, okay, fine, but whatever. Because great reviews, people liked it. It's going to be a cult film. It's the kind of, DC looks good for making this kind of movie situation. And hey, Joker's made $1 billion. Aquaman made $1 billion. Shazam made 360 on a 90 budget. And, DC's doing fine. Because obviously Wonder Woman 84 is going to be a huge hit, even if it doesn't do as well as the first one. So, and then you're going to have the Batman. That was, the order was going to be Wonder Woman, the Batman, then the Suicide Squad. So at this point in the podcast, things are looking up for DC.
We're looking up again as we exit.
Exactly.
We're looking up again.
They're on a fucking winning streak.
Even better than before.
Everything is going to be okay.
This is probably the most positive episode we're going to record. I want to predict that.
I'm positive that it's the most positive.
There are 3 movies. There are 3 movies in this episode I take with me forever. Like I will take them with me. Superhero movies.
3 of the 4 are my favorites, and hell, I mean, Justice League again. 4 out of 5 are their 4 best, almost in a row.
And in this MCU era of superhero movies, and I always mention people, my tastes are weird. I don't match up with a lot of people's stuff that they like and dislike. I see one and I'm like, oh, that was good. Oh, they don't like that one. Okay, well, for example, what was it, the Multiverse of Madness one? Enjoyed the fuck out of that. People hate it when they killed all those
regular people thought it was fine.
Okay, because when they killed all the, I saw
maybe they didn't love it, but they thought it was fine.
When they killed all those cameo people that were all like the internet liked them people, and I lost my shot.
You.
I thought that was fucking hilarious. Oh no, you don't mess with that with the Twitter crowd, or it was Twitter at that time. It was
Well, in many ways, I thought Multiverse of Madness was probably their most transgressive movie since Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
In that it really sort of rubbed their, implicitly or not, sort of rubbed the audience's face in the idea that Marvel was this fan-friendly, progressive franchise.
Yeah.
And that includes, all due respect, people that weren't thrilled about Scarlet Witch becoming a villain. Because again,
but she was a really good villain. I liked what Olsen was doing, and I thought it was scary shit. I was like,
and
okay.
That's fair if you weren't crazy about that for whatever reason. But it also goes to the point that this wasn't supposed to be a franchise that was like heal the world, good for you type stuff. Yeah. That was sort of something that got put on it because they happened to thrive during a point where nobody had anything else to believe in.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it luckily stuck to being a Doctor Strange sequel. That was the funny thing. I think people are expecting some expansive shit out of it. And they're going to show this in it and this in it, and then that doesn't happen, so they're disappointed because their brain. But again,
that wasn't the marketing. That was just the internet.
It was not.
Yep.
So, okay. Well, we're leaving on a high. We're going to do that. We're going to leave on a high.
Molly
again.
Have the last word because we've been babbling.
Yes. So Molly, thank you again for coming back here. This is the insight. I was happy to have you here for. So we're leaving DC and Bright Spirits and everything so what do you have coming up, and where can people follow along with you?
Well, not well, almost said not a lot coming up. That's actually not true. I mean, I always have my monthly year's horror column over on Certified Forgotten, analyzing a different horror film in the subgenre that I kind of named and defined. And then I also have Queer Horror Film Guide is going to be coming out. I believe right now it's expected to be released in February of 2024. But it is available for pre-order now if that is something that you might be interested in. And of course, pretty much on all social media, you can just find me at Molly Henery. The only exception is on Twitter, which I will never call by the other name. On there, I am at Blogging Banshee.
Gotcha.
Scott, are you doing Wakanda Forever or Deadpool or Wonder Woman?
I always do when they do X. I'm always like that because it's ridiculous and stupid.
It is,
and I still think it's I can't.
Safe answer
can't
is
not
Deadpool,
laugh.
by the way.
Okay, I can't not laugh when I
Yes.
call it that. So I always say it so I can have a laugh. That's what I always will say. So Scott, you've had some changes. What's going on? Tell people.
I am writing weekly columns for Puck News, and I have started a new Substack that's sort of going back to what I did at Forbes. Box office punditry, movie reviews, generalized punditry, think pieces, that kind of thing. There's not a paywall up now, but there will eventually be for at least some of the articles. It's called The Outside Scoop. So please Google some variation of Scott Mendelson Substack Outside Scoop. And spoiler, this is being recorded before it starts, so hopefully I'll have a better idea of what the fuck I'm doing there by the time this airs.
It's a Rocky Road scoop, by the way, in case people were wondering. That's what 2 scoops, double scoops. That was my my handle on a Halloween message board back in the day was double scoops. Halloween 4. And I was just a picture. It was this really like little cheapest looking ice cream cone cartoon that I found. So anyway, thank you, Scott. So next year, when we do a fall retrospective, you're going to be moving from Puck to somewhere else, I imagine.
I hope not.
You went from Forbes to the Wrap, and then this year you're going for okay. Anyway,
well, I was at the Wrap and Forbes for 9 years, so we'll see.
Yeah, freaking millennial, Gen X, no loyalty. Just
I'm 43 years old.
Look at you. All right. I'm on the socials at Brandon4KUHD. For anything podcast stage or live podcast stage or podcast awards related, you check out PopCon, which is at popcon.us, happening in April of next year and August of next year. They have officially moved the Louisville date from June to August and in a new facility. So very excited about that. Next week, Chris Johnson of The Normies joins us for part 3 of this DC retrospective.
The COVID era.
With Wonder Woman 1984, Zack Snyder's Justice League, The Suicide Squad, and Peacemaker, the TV series from Max, which I feel like we're revisiting a lot of things. Oh, Wonder Woman's back. We're going to do Justice League again. It's another Suicide Squad. Maybe that's why that slate didn't go. So I don't know. All right. Well, anyways.
Can you imagine how confused regular people watching the Oscars in 2022 were when they saw a scene they didn't recognize from a film they either didn't see or didn't like, winning Fan Cheer Award, voted by online people?
We'll talk about it.
They came out 5 years ago?
Yeah. We'll talk about it next week. Until then, stay film positive.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at BrandonPetersShow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at BrandonPetersShow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.